Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com today for more info, or you can always email me directly through Benji at alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive George Jaeggi. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, A White Man's China. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as BarnesandNoble.com, pretty much all the regular online book resellers. But people, if you want to gather everything that George has in store, well, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal sites. Now, there's two of them that I'm going to list for you. The first one is awhitemanschina.com, followed by georgejaeggi.com. And just to make sure there's no spelling mistakes, his last name is Jaeggi. So that's georgejaeggi.com. Through both of those sites, you're going to find more information on George himself, more information on this fantastic memoir, as well as find the hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's awhitemanschina.com, followed by georgejaeggi.com. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out that George was brought to our network, People of Distinction today, by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And people, if you follow us, you already know I'm talking about CITI of Books. So for my writers out there listening in, if you have created your masterpiece and now you need help moving the book you developed, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give and contact CITI of Books. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and people, this is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to cityofbooks.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help move your creative endeavors. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have George here on the line. Now, the moment you start to do research on George's book, A White Man's China, you understand what we're discussing today. Now, I mentioned it to you already. It's a memoir. So we know we're going to be traveling alongside George in his travel experiences in China. Now, this book is wonderfully informative for anybody that is planning a trip to China, and it's going to give you a great insight into what to expect. For anyone just interested in learning about the country more, but also why George believes, as well as many others, why China is the world's next superpower. I'm telling you, there's a lot happening here. This book is nuanced. This book is layered. This book needs to be on your shelf. And at the end of the day, don't take my word for it. Take George's. It's his book. He's written it. It's his life. He's lived it. He's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So sit back and strap in. George, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing really good, and I'm quite impressed what you're talking about me here, Benji. I'm very happy to listen to what you have to say, so I basically don't have to say anything anymore.
There you go. George, we're done. That's it. Open and shut. We have completed here today. No, listen, man, I appreciate the kind words. I was just following your lead. All right, George, so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pass it back. We're playing tennis now. We're throwing it back and forth. You started it, okay? I just followed your roadmap, man. But truer words have never been spoken. I really do mean this, George. We've heard a lot about China and their emergence to being at the forefront of the world's next superpower. I mean, you are by no means the first person to say it, and I know a lot of people who feel the exact same way. Now, I personally have never traveled to China, but I've always wanted to, and I'm hoping that my wife and I and our children will have the opportunity to very soon, because I've heard nothing but great things. So I'm looking forward to this discussion because it's going to be very informative for myself as well as our listening audience here. George, before we go into your book, start by telling us a little bit more about yourself. Who is George Jaeggi?
Okay, that's very simple. Like, I was born in Switzerland in a small village of 451 people. And it was called Halten, and in the province of Solothurn. And I got educated there, and I did the banking apprenticeship in the provincial city Solothurn. And after completing the compulsory basic army training in Switzerland, I worked for 1 year at the bank. at the Commerzbank of Solothurn. And then I immigrated as a 19-year-old to Canada. I never went to school to learn English. I never had an hour English, and due to the lack of my English knowledge, I worked the first 4 years in many, many different jobs, including 1 year in a logging camp. I did some painting, I did some tool sharpening, I did assembly line work, and a lot of cooking. Being from Switzerland, people think I know how to cook, and so I got a job as a breakfast lunch cook. And that's what I did the first 4 years in Canada, and slowly, I started to understand how to speak in English. After 4 years, I found an office job. I kept looking for jobs in an office, and luckily the guy who was interviewing me, his English was worse than mine. Like, my language is German, but the German guy as well. And he saw my resume from Switzerland, and he says, "Oh, you're a banker, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can get this job." And it was a division of Magna International. But at that time, Magna International had 7 plants in Canada, and they were very, very small. But then Magna grew, and right now it's one of the largest part supplier to the automotive. But I was with them until the year 2000, and I advanced being a divisional controller with them, and we expanded 3 different plants we built up during that period of time. And then a German company approached me that they had a contract with Mercedes in Alabama, and they were forced, because of NAFTA, the new agreement, they were forced to produce in North America or lose the job. Like, they are based in Germany and, supplies Mercedes and Volkswagen and all those deals.
Yeah.
But they wanted that business in America. So I opened a plant for them here in Canada, and it went pretty well. I worked for 3 years, and I tried to get some extra jobs, new business, but everything was everybody kept saying, "Well, your prices are too high. Like, we can buy these parts much, much cheaper somewhere else." And there were 2 major competitors in North America, and I found out they buy their parts in China, either buy them or produce them. I didn't know which one, but their prices, we couldn't compete with. We made mechanical cables for the seating industry. And so I talked the German company into opening a plant in China, and they wanted total control over it. So we went to Xiamen, and they built a big building, and it took about a year and a half to get this factory on the way. And they hired a lot of people, consultants, and it was interesting. And then one of a sudden, General Motors ran into trouble in 2018, and the China plant, the Germans had no chance but basically close it down. And we moved all the tools back to Canada, and I said, well, if production starts again, at least we gonna, do it here in Canada. And yes, production went back up. But in the meantime, I was looking for a place in China to produce again. And this time I wanted to do it under the Canadian, under our control. And I found a joint venture partner who was willing to open a plant with us. And we had no money, but we had some machinery down in Xiamen, which belonged to the corporate office. And I talked them into give me that equipment. And I made a deal with the joint venture partner that I said, you give me money for the same amount of money what I give you in equipment. And we started a joint venture in outside Shanghai. And that went really, really well. I started an engineering office, and we started really expanding within China. And 3 years later, we opened a plant up north in Yansan. And yeah, so we did a lot of business in China. Yeah. I did a lot of hiring, and it was interesting to learn all this. Mm-hmm. As I say, like, I did business mostly in North America, of course, Mexico, U.S., Canada, a lot in Europe. I had a plant connection in Hungary and in Poland, and of course in Germany. And I did a lot of business then, of course, in China, and we had some suppliers in Korea and in Japan as well. And, we started also supplying to Honda and, to the Japanese manufacturers as well. So that's what basically happened.
Fantastic.
And then I sort of semi-retired and did just consulting for some German companies who wanted to do business in China. And I traveled since 2005 over 50 times to China, and always basically spent 2 weeks working, but I would work 10 days, and I tell my translator person, fly me somewhere. And I would spend 4 days with suppliers, families up north or inside of China, all the different places. And I really wanted to learn about China and not the touristy stuff. I mean, I saw all the touristy stuff as well, but I wanted to actually meet and, enjoy life with normal Chinese people.
Yeah. George, thank you very much for this information. People, I'm telling you, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, awhitemanschina.com, georgejaeggi.com are the places you have to go. A White Man's China is the book you need to pick up, and George Jaeggi is the absolute embodiment of a person of distinction that is bringing this book to your shelves. My follow-up question that I want to go into, George, is I understand why this is something of interest to you. And of course, all of your travels, all of your experiences, this could have been something that stayed in a personal journal. This could have been something that you verbally told those around you, but you took it a step further and published the book for the masses. What was your intent or inspiration behind doing that?
Well, okay, when I go back to my introduction, I forgot to mention when I was 17, I started writing. Writing is my passion. Mm-hmm. And I worked for the local newspaper, and they gave me 2 assignments a week. And one was always a movie critic, and the other one was some kind of event, a political event or a sports event. But twice a week, I had a column in there, and I get paid by the words. That was really funny. I always told them, if you cut out too much of my story, then I get less money, and then I get, I needed to get paid.
Right.
My movie was the one with, I was 16 and a half at that time. That was Clint Eastwood's movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
And this was my first published article in the newspaper, and that's why this movie is very important to me in that sense. And when I came then to Canada, I kept writing, and I wrote a play. It's called Too Blind to See, and I wrote a novel about the Freemasoners, the secret society. It's called Why So Sad, Mr. Odd. But they were both in German, and when I got then the office job and all the work, I basically never published anything. I translated the play, is now total finished in English, mm-hmm. and the novel is about 3/4 finished, translated into English. And as I told you, my English is very down to earth, very simple. Because, I'm not an academic. I talk normal. I talk very, very simple. And I use it sometimes as an excuse. If people say, what did you mean? Then I say, well, maybe you didn't understand what I said, or I didn't understand what you asked me. Because, as I say, my English is fairly basic. And so the writing, when I did the writing for the book here for the White Man's China, I said, if I can publish this, maybe I can find a way to publish the play and to publish the novel as well. So that's my next step, basically. I wanted to learn to see how it really works with publishing. Like as I say, I have a lot of experience in management in office and all that kind of stuff, but I never was involved in publishing. Mm-hmm. And so, I Googled how the heck you publish a book and whatever you do. And that's what I did. I found some people who helped me to, produce it. And that's where I'm now. And as I say, I'm looking for the next step eventually to do the play. It would be great to actually produce the play and not just publish it, to actually produce it. And the novel, I have quite a few people who seem to be interested in that novel, which I'm translating into English, which I wrote when I was, between 18 and 22. I wrote basically that novel. It was based on a story which was told to me by some people, and slowly but surely it will work out.
This man knows his stuff, because he has, what is it? It's been over 50 visits, I believe, that you have taken, over 50 trips to China. Is that correct, George?
Yes. Yes. So that means I spent there over 800 days, mm-hmm. more or less, which is, a little bit more than a year.
So significant. Yeah. George, as we close out of here, man, my last question for you, and I know we've already started to go into it, but I want to condense it and really hone it in here for our listening audience. But George, what are you hoping to see your readers take from your book?
Well, first of all, I want that the people see the cultural differences between Westerners and the Chinese. Mm-hmm. And I want to challenge those predetermined stereotypes that currently exist, that it is either that way or this way. Like, I'm trying that people are open-minded, and I'm trying to show it in the book. Like, I thought I knew China, and then I found out China is different, and you had to learn, and I did learn how to communicate with the people, how to make them feel at ease with you, and how you can do business. Because I went there and we didn't have money. Like, if you have a lot of money, you can be. In the book, I mentioned the tourist businessman. He goes there and they show you all the nice things and everybody smiles. And if you have money, there's no problem. You can buy anything you want. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have the money and you have to make sure that you're successful there, you have to work the way with the normal Chinese people, not just with the consultants who basically are fixing everything for you. But you have also to pay them. But if you have money, it doesn't matter. You just pay them. But if you don't have the money, you have to learn to do business with the average, normal Chinese people. Yeah. And they are willing to help, but it's not as easy as it sounds. And you have to learn and that they accept you as a Westerner. It's like, people ask me why I called it A White Man's China. And funny enough, it was actually the Chinese people who suggested I use this name. And they said, shouldn't it be China? And, the one thing people need to understand, and I know some people are not happy when I say that, but in China, you're either white or black or Asian.
Mm-hmm.
There is no in between. And like I noticed that, like I would go there and you're in a lineup and there is somebody non-white in front of you who is not Asian, and they hassle them. It's sad to say, but they deal with them differently than with a white guy. And I wanted to show, like, yes, it was easier for me being a white guy, but I didn't have the big money, so it was not that easy.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to show, like a Westerner does not necessarily, they don't treat a Westerner the same as they treat a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's just the fact, and I think people need to understand this. And it's, it is the way it is. But, we treat people over here also in different ways.
Yeah.
And so they told me basically, just use the word white man and then people know what you're talking about. And you see, and I also wrote it for the Chinese to learn what we think. Like the book is not just for us to read what the Chinese think. I wrote it also in a way that my Chinese friends, they can read the book and find out how the Westerners, how we feel about them, and what our problems are. Why are we so weird sometimes? And we call them weird and they call us weird. But, so I give different examples on how that works, But, in China, there's only one word you really need to learn, and that word is gangbei. Gangbei, if you know this word, you get anywhere in China. It means bottoms up. You have the little drink. You say, in German we say Prosit, but in English you say cheers, and in China you say gangbei. If you do gangbei with the people, they smile, and you have to smile, and that's all you need to do there. If you accept them, then you can do in China whatever you want. And again, coming back, why China is the next superpower. I mean, it's 1.5 billion people. The first time I went to China, we went to Xiamen, and then we wanted to go to Shanghai. And the one guy said, "Oh, I know a connection in Ningbo. We're going to stop there before we go to Shanghai." So we flew to Ningbo, and I looked up, what the heck is Ningbo? 8 million people live in Ningbo. I never heard that name before. In China, at that time, were 64 cities over 1 million people. I mean, the vastness is just unbelievable. Like, I come from Switzerland. At that time, we were 6-7 million people. And I'm going here to one little town I never heard of, 8 million people. That's when you learn how China has an ability to grow, and it is growing. The people are happy in a sense there because every year they grow. I asked once one guy, I said, like, how come people, like, they make so little money, but how come they are happy? And he said, because next year they will make more. Because, I mean, their increase, usually the GDP increases is used to be roughly 10%. And now the West is saying China is in a crisis. Yeah, but they still have 5.3% right now, okay? Like, I don't know if that's a crisis or not. It's, after the pandemic, yes, things turned a little bit sour. But 5.3% is still a pretty good GDP increase. So the market is there. And, a lot of Westerner companies opened up, like, Volkswagen. Like, Volkswagen is really big there. Kentucky Fried Chicken opened in 1987. Starbucks in 1999. And they are growing. They are huge over there. Mm-hmm. And so something, and as I said, people love the Western food. As funny it sounds, like lineups at a Starbucks is unbelievable.
People, I'm going to tell you what's unbelievable. The fact that we have discussed so much information here today, and yet we've barely scratched the surface. I'm telling you, this book has so much information, so much to offer. It's Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's awhitemanschina.com, as well as GeorgeJaeggi.com. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and get lost in all of it. A fantastic resource if you're planning on traveling, but just a wonderfully informative resource to add to your shelf and to have to read on any given day. Head on over there today and get lost in all of it. George, this has been a true pleasure. Man, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Benny, it was really, really nice talking to you, and I hope I maybe meet you one day and we can talk over it over lunch, okay?